Manx Radio's update with Lewis Foster.
Fastamai, good evening. It's 5 o'clock on Wednesday, the 13th of November, and it's time for Updates, your 30-minute look at the latest news on and from the Isle of Man. Coming up, doctors are soon to be balloted on industrial action. Millions of pounds were lost at the airport and bus vanning over the last financial year. And should we think about reviving the film industry here? All that and more, plus business, weather and sport, and what to watch out for on the roads. Let us know your thoughts. Text 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. First of all, Christian Jones has the headlines for us. Fastamai, Christian.
Fastamai. Doctors on the Isle of Man are being described as deeply frustrated, overstretched and underpaid as a ballot is due to get underway on whether to take industrial action. The British Medical Association's row over pay continues as it seeks a 12.6% uplift for the 23-24 financial year. A Douglas North MHK will ask Tynwald to consider the merits of once again investing in an Isle of Man film industry.
We did actually have some big successes, and I think it's time for us to take a breath and look again.
David Ashford would like to see a select committee established following a petition submitted by a Manx resident on Tynwald Day, which calls for a rolling £20 million fund. A new piece of equipment based at Nobles Hospital is making a massive difference for patients who have trouble swallowing.
Because it enables the clinicians to show what's going on in the back of their relative's throat. Nothing like that's been brought forward before.
The video nasoryngoscope allows healthcare professionals to see and record action in real time to identify issues. And the winner of this year's senior TT race will be joining the lap record holder at FHO Racing in 2025. It's been announced Davy Todd and Peter Hickman will race for the BMW factory-supported team next year. In international news, a taxi driver charged with the murder of his 10-year-old daughter says he takes full responsibility for her death. Irfan Sharif denies murdering Sarah at their home in Wokingham, Surrey last year before fleeing to Pakistan. President Biden has greeted his successor to the White House, Donald Trump, with a handshake in the Oval Office. Some votes are still being counted more than a week on from the US election. And failing hospitals in England will be named and shamed in so-called league tables.
The state of the health service is heartbreaking, and I'm yet to hear anyone seriously contest this analysis.
UK Health Secretary Wes Streeting also announced plans that would see NHS bosses sacked if they can't improve patient care and manage finances. Those are the update news headlines. Next at 6.
Gromayed. Thank you, Christian Jones, with the headlines there. Now for the weather, brought to you by Manx Glass and Glazing. Remaining overcast this evening and overnight with occasional outbreaks of drizzle and fog over higher ground. Light wind soon settling northwesterly and freshening, minimum temperature 11 degrees. Cloudy tomorrow with further outbreaks of drizzle at times, this especially later in the day. Light to moderate northerly wind, falling light and variable later, top temperature 12 or 13 degrees. Then dull and overcast on Friday with drizzle at times. The light to moderate westerly wind will gradually freshen throughout the day with a best temperature of 12 degrees. Sunrise tomorrow morning at 7:45 and sunset tomorrow afternoon at 19 minutes past 4.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
Many people are struggling. You can help by volunteering or making a donation to Isle of Man Food Bank, whether it be food or essential items or financial support. Please call 646 999, brought to you by Descon Office Interiors.
A great night's sleep got even better with Zed's Bedding Store. From quality Bell-Dorm bed linen and mattress protectors, fleece and woven throws to luxury duvets from the fine bedding company. Zed's Bedding Ramsey, next to Isle of Man Bank.
Reach the Isle of Man's biggest radio audience with Manx Radio. Airtime, sponsorship and digital opportunities available. For more information on how we can help your business grow its market share, contact the friendly, experienced team on sales at manxradio.com.
For a wide range of wood-burning stoves and a complete installation service, visit The Snug in Ramsey. And we don't stop there. Kiln-dried firewood and full aftercare service, including chimney sweeps and maintenance. Call The Snug in Ramsey.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
And it's just gone at 5:05. Doctors on the Isle of Man will be balloted from next week on whether to take industrial action in a row over pay. The British Medical Association announced last month that it would put the matter to a vote as it seeks a 12.6% uplift for the 2023 to 24 financial year. Sian Cowper has the details.
The BMA's 155 on-island members will be asked whether they support industrial action when the ballot opens on Tuesday next week. It's the first time doctors have been balloted for industrial action on the Isle of Man, with the BMA claiming members have experienced real-term pay cuts since 2008. In a statement confirming the dates of the ballot, the BMA's Chair of Council, Professor Phil Banfield, said, "I've heard from doctors on the Isle of Man how deeply frustrated they are. They're overstretched and underpaid. Resident, consultant and SAS doctors across the UK have successfully taken action and started the journey to restoring the relative lost value and their pay for the work they do." Doctors on the Isle of Man deserve the same. The BMA stands ready to support Manx doctors in fighting for appropriate recognition of their skills and expertise. In a recent interview with Manx Radio, Dr Prakash Tyagarajan, the local negotiating committee chair for the BMA, said no doctor really wants to go on strike.
Most of the Isle of Man doctors have lost up to a third of their pay in real terms over these years. Obviously, we're not asking to restore it in one go, but if we can get a credible offer, even now it's not too late, we can pause any ballot and put it to vote amongst doctors, and no doctor really wants to go on strike.
Discussing the prospect of industrial action in an interview with Manx Radio last month, Manx Care Chief Executive Teresa Cope said any action would have a big impact on its services.
I mean, any industrial action is going to have a significant impact. I mean, any form of industrial action is not good. It's very distracting, it's very unsettling, and I would just make the point again, it's not what any of us would want.
The ballot will close at midday on Monday, the 23rd of December.
Sian Cowper, Guramayed. Now, at Douglas North, MHK will ask Tynwald to consider the merits of once again investing in an Isle of Man film industry. David Ashford would like to see a select committee established following a petition submitted by a Manx resident on Tynwald Day this year. George Hargreaves wants a rolling £20 million feature film, print and advertising fund loan guarantee scheme, saying he's aggrieved by the decimation of the industry here. Government stopped investing some years ago after making a reported £26 million loss. But Mr Ashford told John Moss he believes it's worth looking at again.
I think what's important is that we look at the film industry. What might well come out of any committee is not that we need a £20 million fund. We all know that at the moment finances
But that's what the petitioner wants, isn't it?
That's what the petitioner wants, but like I say, it's about getting the committee to look at the petition, to look at ways of bringing things forward, because we did have a vibrant film industry on the island. There's questions about whether it was done about the right way and whether things were delivered in quite the right way, but we did actually have some big successes, and I think it's time for us to take a breath and look again, and the petition is a vehicle for doing that.
But people remembering the £26 million loss, is there any chance of them saying, yes, let's have another crack at it?
Well, let's be clear on the £26 million loss, John. You'll have to remember there was at the time lots of conversations about that. I think actually what we need to do is just take a look. A committee may come back and actually say it's not viable and that we can't move this forward. But there may be other ways without actually having to put our hands into our pockets and for taxpayers' money to actually move this forward.
Do you see filmmaking on the island as a way of promoting the island?
I think it's a great way of promoting the island, and it certainly got us some international headlines and a lot of notice at the time.
The point was made that no film was ever actually set in the island. They all just used the island as a setting for somewhere else.
And I don't see anything wrong with that. I mean, you have New Zealand that has a very vibrant film industry, and how many of those films are actually set in New Zealand? Very few. So, you know, it's about the scenery, it's about showing off what the Isle of Man is. And like I say, although within the petition itself it calls for a specific fund of taxpayers' money, Any committee might well say, well, there's other things we can do without expending taxpayers' money. So the whole point of the motion is to say, is for me, pick up the petition, say, let's form a committee of 3 members to look at this and see if there is viable things that we can do.
Looking at the question of a film industry.
So it's things that we
specific.
can do, see what we can do in relation to the petition, and if there's things around that can actually be done that won't necessarily cost a fortune to the taxpayer.
Douglas North MHK David Ashford speaking to John Moss there about hopes to see a select committee established following a Tynwald Day petition to consider the merits of once again investing in an Isle of Man film industry. You can find more on that story over at manxradio.com. It's just gone 5:10. The Infrastructure Minister warns there are challenging times ahead and services will be changing as his department plan for 2024 to 25 is published. Tim Crookall says the next few years will be incredibly hard, admitting his plan underplays the difficulty, but he personally wants to be fair and transparent. It also looks at the financial year for last year, as Christian Jones reports.
Of those public-facing services recording losses in the last financial year, Government Public Estates and Housing recorded the greatest loss of £28.6 million. Bosvannon recorded a loss of just under £7 million. The public transport provider marked an income of 5.2 and an expenditure of £12 million, creating an overall loss of £6,985,000. Ronaldsway Airport marked an income of £4.6 million and an expenditure of £13.4 million, resulting in an £8.8 million loss. The Heritage Railway network brought in £2.2 million over the year, but £5.7 million was spent on it in return, resulting in a loss of just shy of £3.5 million. The areas bringing in money to the department, vehicle and driver licensing and administration, brought home £15.9 million and the harbours brought in £2.377 million. The department plan also highlights some other work accomplished over the past year, including the opening of the new Isle of Man Liverpool ferry terminal and records amount of road resurfacing carried out across the island. It also notes the work to upgrade and extend the King Edward VIII pier in Douglas Harbour to accommodate the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company's new vessel, Manxman. Among its priorities and targets for the year ahead, it cites a plan to create a housing association, develop a transport strategy, and review the sea services with the Steam Packet Company. It also aims to create an airport non-executive board to work on a long-term policy framework, strategy and investment plan to consider a new operating model for Ronaldsway. You can find a link to the DOI's department plan at manxradio.com.
Christian Jones, thank you. Now, applications for a position on the Isle of Man's Legislative Council are open, with elections scheduled to take place in March next year. Members of the public can now put themselves forward directly, removing the former requirement of needing a nomination from an MHK. President Lawrence Skelly explains what MLCs typically find themselves doing.
Politics is very much you get out of what you put into it. There are, of course, scheduled sittings, which is Legislative Council sits usually when House of Keys sits, and then, of course, once a month Tynwald sits. And, of course, when Tynwald sits, that can be for 3 days, 3 nights. However, outside the sittings, there is other parliamentary work, whether you could be on a parliamentary committee, select committee. You could also be involved with departments or statutory boards. So you could be a member in either of those, multiple as well at the same time. So the only difference really between a member of the Legislative Council and the House of Keys is two things. Number one, you will not become a minister. Number two, you do not have constituents. However, you are representing the whole of the Isle of Man.
And there is a new process in place this time which removes the requirement to be nominated by an MHK to be able to put your name forward. So are you expecting there to be some new faces appearing?
Yes, I would hope so. And as I say, people who are just thinking about it, I would encourage them just to engage either with me directly or if they know of any of the MHKs or MLCs, to speak to them to get personal feedback as well, because that is very helpful. And the last thing, of course, is do come along and attend a meeting, one of the sittings, whether it be Legislative Council, Tynwald, and also House of Keys, because they are available, obviously, for the public to witness firsthand exactly what actually happens.
President of Tynwald, Lawrence Skelly.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
Quick look at the business news on the Isle of Man today. A new headline sponsor is being sought for road racing events in the south of the island. The Southern 100 Club is inviting expressions of interest to become the track sponsor for the Ballown course. An exclusive deal would see the successful applicant gain naming rights to the 4.25-mile circuit, which currently hosts 2 annual meetings, the Southern 100 Road Races and the Pre-TT Classic. The club will listen to offers in excess of £10,000 per year on a minimum 3-year contract, with applications open until Saturday the 30th of November. Details on the sponsorship and how to put forward expressions of interest can be found on the Southern 100 website.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
We'll head over to the roads now. A section of Groves Road in Douglas is closed by the NSC for drainage work. The NSC car park can be accessed from the new Castletown Road. In Douglas as well, the bottom end of Summer Hill is closed for gas main replacement, and Victoria Road is one way between Stanley Place and Broadway in a southerly direction towards Broadway for electrical works. And temporary lights on Governor's Road to replace the street lighting there as well. And in Peel, until the 30th of November, Christian Street is closed for resurfacing. During the closure, the lower section of Derby Road is two-way, with parking suspended between the police station and Athol Place. And in Laxey, a stretch of the Ballycollister Road is closed between Pinfold Hill and Rensell Hill for overlay works. Over at the airport, slight delay expected on the 5 to 8 Logan Air flight to Edinburgh later, otherwise all okay this evening. And Manxman should just be arriving around about now back into Douglas from Heysham. She'll be departing back later at 7:15.
Ask how you can spread the cost interest-free at
Quayside.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
The time now, 17 minutes past 5. The 2024 Macau Grand Prix gets underway tonight, and 2 island road racers will be flying the Manx flag in Asia over the coming days. Marcus Simpson will make his debut at the meeting, whilst it's year number 2 for Santon man Michael Evans.
You know, it's been a difficult year. It's hard to hide that, but the last half of the year has been great. Really enjoyed the riding the bike. And, well, obviously I had a good crash at the Northwest and a good crash at the TT. Yeah, they were tough to sort of get your head around a little bit, and I think maybe things just weren't right that led to those things, and they've happened. They're in the past. I moved on, and I think maybe some of it boils down to a bit of pressure that maybe I put on myself. There was certainly no pressure from anybody in my camp. Maybe I just lost the idea or the fun of it, so I've gone back to basics. Macau, you know, it's been going for 70 odd years now. It's a great event, and I'm thoroughly looking forward to everything it entails. But for me, as a first timer there, it's purely about going there with Joey, who's been my right hand for the last couple of years, and John, who's been a long-time sponsor of mine, and just going with the lads and, you know, basically thanking them. For me, it's all about opportunities and stories to tell in 20 years' time. You know, some amazing people have rode that. So to get the opportunity to go to an event like this and just enjoy it and no pressure is great.
An extremely unique place. It's as unique as the TT is. It's a road race, but it's quite extreme. Last year was take it all in, be steady and just not ride around, but, you know, be sensible with what I'm doing. And obviously this year, still be sensible and stuff, but, you know, I can kind of go for it a little bit more. To be able to go and say that you've ridden, you know, raced your bike around a city in China is quite a unique thing, and it's something that when I'm older and stuff, I can say that I did it, and that's it. It's the experience really for me. It's an extremely technical track. It's definitely the hardest track that I've ever had to learn. But you don't get a lot of sessions. I mean, last year, obviously, I kind of stayed away from anybody. I just did my own thing. Coming into it in a bit of a different situation this year, it might not even be something that you learn or do straight away, but it's something that if you see what they do, that can really help. So I'll try and do that.
Marcus Simpson and Michael Evans speaking there. First free practice is currently scheduled to get underway tonight at around midnight UK time. Now it is 19 minutes past 5, and Manx Radio's news editor Tessa Hawley joins me in the studio now, because in the last few moments, Tessa, we have had an update from police regarding missing man Lee Scott. Tessa.
We have some sad news to bring you this evening. Police have told us that the body of a man was recovered from Douglas Harbour earlier today, and that followed a search by specialist personnel. Now, whilst the police have yet to formally identify the man, he's strongly believed to be that of missing Douglas man Lee Scott. Police say they are continuing to support Lee's family members, and inquiries into the circumstances of his disappearance will continue. They have also thanked the public for their assistance with the search for Lee over the last few days, and they are asking now that people respect the family's privacy and refrain from any further speculation.
Sad news. Tessa Hawley, thank you. 5:20 now.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
Now, the Department of Infrastructure is to save between £35,000 and £50,000 annually by stopping the collection of paper from its bring banks. But then again, does it give the public a negative view of the government's green credentials? This after they say it will reduce carbon emissions. John Moss spoke to Infrastructure Minister Tim Crookall.
We're still interested in it. Of course we're interested in it, but it's a case of if it's not worth us spending that money on it at the moment, they can still recycle by going to the bring banks at the civic amenity sites. But it's costing us money, and it's also creating a lot of emissions, if you like, from those wagons going around.
But they're going to have to look for places to get rid of it, and a lot of people will probably say, well, I'll just burn the stuff, and that's obviously going to put stuff in the atmosphere.
Well, no, it's not going to put stuff in the atmosphere. Don't get too carried away, John, because it goes through the energy from waste plant, which has the scrubbers and cleans it all.
If they have a bit of land, they say, I might as well burn the paper.
No, it's not that bad. No, people don't do that. If it goes in the bin, then it goes through the energy from waste plant. But it's, we're still working with people, and if they want to recycle that's still a possibility. Yes, it might be a little bit harder for them.
So would you encourage people to go and look for somewhere to put this stuff?
Absolutely. If that's what they want to do, yeah, absolutely. Keep on recycling. But if you don't want to, as we've said, then just put it in your bin, and we'll get some good out of it from the energy from waste plant.
Is this, looking at on one hand, a plus because people seem to be getting less paper?
Yeah, absolutely. And over I think the first figure I gave was 1,400 tonnes in 2004, and now we're down to less than 200 tonnes. And people aren't having newspapers anymore, and lots of other bits and pieces. So that's where we are at the moment. So it's just not really worth us financially, and also from the environment point of view, with all the emissions from the wagons going around doing the collections.
Infrastructure Minister Tim Crookall speaking to John Moss there. Ramsey MHK has put forward a motion to introduce an all-island leisure rate with the money ring-fenced to pay for the regional swimming pools. Laurie Hooper says there needs to be more fairness because residents in the east don't pay for the NSC, whilst others pay twice.
If you've seen recently the issues we've had with funding of the Southern Pool, for example, and talk of deficiency payments and arrangements and all sorts, it actually makes a lot of sense to say if you've got national assets like the regional pools, like the National Sports Centre, actually there should be some equality and parity of provision and actually parity of funding. So if you think about the way the swimming pools are funded at the moment, everyone on the island pays a swimming pool rate apart from people living in the east who don't pay a swimming pool rate. The NSC is entirely funded out of taxation, so actually people in Ramsey, for example, are paying twice. We're paying for a national pool in the NSC and we're paying for a local pool in Ramsey. So to my mind, it seems fair that everybody pays towards their local pool. The easiest way of doing that is through an all-island leisure rate. It also gives you an advantage that says, well, start with pools, but actually you might want to fund things like libraries nationally. You might want to fund amenity sites nationally. There are other things which you might think, actually, let's try and fund these things in a more sensible way rather than relying on the mishmash arrangements you have from a postcode kind of system. And the important thing is this is only about the way that you fund these services. It's not about the way they're delivered. I still think that regional pools should be delivered locally by local commissioners. That works really well.
This all-island leisure rate has gone before Tynwald and Keys a number of times. Why now? Why have you decided to bring it up again?
We haven't really had many conversations about rates in this administration. I think the government has made a conscious decision not to proceed down the road of rate reform or local authority reform. I don't think that's right, actually. I think rates are something that comes up quite a lot with people around the unfairness of the system, and that's principally the reason for tabling this. It's about fairness.
Ramsey MHK Laurie Hooper speaking to local democracy reporter Emma Draper.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
Approaching 24 minutes past 5, Manx Radio sports editor Rob Pritchard joins me in the studio with today's sporting news. Faster my Rob.
Faster my Lewis. Well, starting off today, plenty of motorsport news coming out throughout this morning and this afternoon. Starting off, the winner of this year's senior TT race will be joining the lap record holder at FHO Racing in 2025. It's been announced Davey Todd and Peter Hickman will race for the BMW factory-supported team next year. The pair will race in the Superbike, Senior and Super Stock classes for the team. Todd says he's absolutely over the moon to be part of the lineup, having taken his first TT victories at this year's event. It's a switch from the Milwaukee BMW by Taz Racing team for 29-year-old Todd, with whom he won both the 2024 Senior TT and this year's Superstock TT race. Elsewhere, Todd is already part of the FHO Racing squad, taking part in this week's Macau Grand Prix alongside Hickman as well as Michael Rutter. Elsewhere, Honda Racing UK has also announced its lineup for next year's TT. Dean Harrison and John McGuinness will continue to ride for the team in 2025. Harrison will be taking part in the Senior, Superbike, Superstock and Supersport classes for Honda, while McGuinness will focus on the Superstock, Superbike and Senior races. Both competed at the event in 2024 as part of a 3-rider lineup alongside Manx rider Nathan Harrison, who isn't in the lineup for next year. Speaking on the absence of Onken rider Nathan from the squad, team manager Javier Beltran adds, "I would like to thank Nathan for his commitment to the team over the last 2 seasons. Together we achieved his best ever finish and average lap speed at the TT. I am confident that he has a bright future ahead of him and I hope to be able to continue supporting him going forward." And finally, young Manx footballer Freddie O'Donoghue scored his first senior goal for Carlisle United last night. The former Ireland player scored the Cumbrian side's equaliser in an eventual 2-1 win away at Morecambe in the Bristol Street Motors Trophy at the Mazuma Mobile Stadium on Tuesday evening. While having emerged into the first team setup in pre-season, he's gone on to make numerous senior squad appearances, having made his competitive debut for Carlisle United in September. In last night's game, a 16th minute strike from Hallam Hope saw Morecambe lead right up until the 75th minute before O'Donoghue made an immediate impact off the bench for the visitors, converting a close-range finish from a Ben Williams cross. Provider of Carlisle's first would then become the finisher for their second, as Williams himself found the net 3 minutes later to help his side to victory.
Rob Pritchard, Gurmayed. That's it for Update Tonight. Thank you for joining me. You can listen back to tonight's programme as a podcast on manxradio.com shortly. Howard Kane is here next with Spotlight before Greatest Hits with Chris Kinley at 6 o'clock. In the meantime, have a good evening.